Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. Exercising one's right to vote is one of the most precious rights which a citizen in a democratic country covets. In India, adult franchise has been the basis ever since we adopted the constitution in 1950. However, in the last few years, there has been a lot of debate about certain categories of people being left out for various reasons. The strong NRI community, consisting of approximately over 1 crore of Indians living and working abroad, is one community, as well as the domestic migrant labor. The NRIs were conferred the voting rights in 2011, with the condition, however, that they should exercise it in the place they reside in India normally. This curtailed many NRIs who could not go back to their places of residence to vote. Meanwhile, there is a lot of discussion on the voting rights of domestic migrant labor, who constitute apparently 37%. Most of these people are denied the voting rights as they can't manage to go back to their home to exercise their right. So in the context of all this, we will discuss all the pros and cons of providing e-voting facilities to the NRIs and also the issue of domestic migrant labor. To discuss this, I have with me KTS Tulsi, senior advocate in the Supreme Court and also a MP in the Rajya Sabha, SY Qureshi, former Chief Election Commissioner, Tapan, CPI-M MP in the Rajya Sabha, and Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, retired diplomat and former ambassador. We are also joined just now by Aman, who is the national spokesperson of the BJP. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Qureshi, this issue has become a little more interesting and a little, I would say complicated also. But what was it that the Election Commission had, in its report, said about this matter?
Well, the issue has been coming up.
As far as the NRIs are concerned.
Yes. The issue has been coming up before Election Commission for many years. Till such time when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh announced in Parvasi Divas that by next year they will have the right to vote. So we came into
This was when?
I think it was 4 years ago.
Okay.
So we were not really prepared. Then we called Ministry of External Affairs. We had serious doubts about it. Suppose we allow the voting in the embassies, what will be the reaction of those countries? And then we talked to the External Affairs Secretary, Nirubara. She came and she said, look, if lakhs of people apply, we can't handle, our systems will crash, we will give you the password for our passport and visa, you handle it. He said, look, how can we verify? You have to verify the applicant and only then we can give them the voting right. In any case, willy-nilly, when we decided we'll try it on an experimental basis, fearing about how people will respond. To our surprise, the response was they may be very loud in Parvasi Divas, but then when it came to registering as voter, within a month, Kerala state election was happening, about 8,000 people registered. Because what was allowed in the Act of Parliament was that you have to be physically present at the constituency where you register, and that constituency will be which is recorded in your passport as a permanent address. So in any case, about 8,000 people registered in Kerala, and 4,000 of them came and voted also, and there was even a candidate. But later on in Punjab, only 3 registered. No, 100, 200, 300 are registering. Of course, when we talk to the NRIs, they say that physically coming is difficult, which one can really understand. The answer is that there should be e-voting.
E-voting. The question now is about e-voting. Because the government yesterday in the Rajya Sabha discussion said that we will provide for e-voting or proxy voting.
Yeah, because e-voting has two different implications. One is voting through the internet.
Right.
That, of course, we rule out at least in the near future because we know that internet can be hacked. Pentagon is hacked every time. President of US is hacked. Everything is hacked. So now you can rob a bank by hacking, but that's a small thing. But you can't rob an election. That's not acceptable at all. Secondly, why we are not looking at internet voting in the near future, that your security of the secrecy of vote and your safety is paramount.
Yes.
Suppose e-voting is allowed, somebody comes to your house, puts a gun, vote in front of me. We can't protect you there.
Right.
Or gives you an envelope. Okay, you vote in front of me, or better still, you give me your laptop, I'll vote myself. So we can't guarantee that. So we are not looking at that kind of distance voting. When the matter went to the Supreme Court, the Election Commission set up a committee which looked at all the systems in the world, and there are 5. One is physically voting, and the 4 others, proxy voting, which incidentally we use for our defense forces already.
Okay.
It's not being, it has not become very popular, and we don't understand why the Defense Ministry has not publicized it. The other is postal ballot. The problem with postal ballot is that you have only 13 days for the postal ballot to reach you and come back.
Okay.
That's impossible, especially from remote. The Election Commission came out with an alternative, e-postal ballot. We send you the ballot by mail, you download it, and then you send it by post physically. So the Election Commission has offered both the alternatives, but then of course the current debate, whether it amounts to discrimination. You are so concerned about distance voting from there. What about the millions of migrants?
Migrants. Aman Sinha is the national spokesperson of the BJP. Your party seems to be very keen on going ahead with this thing. We have heard the former chief election commissioner saying, the kind of problems which it can. But why is it that there is so much keenness in going ahead with it, knowing fully well that there are quite a few pitfalls?
Well, Girish ji, in a democracy, it should be everybody's endeavor to maximize voting. And Qureshi Saab, when he was chief election commissioner, he himself, there were several campaigns trying to, increase the voter awareness, maximize the voting. So this should be the, everybody's endeavor in any democracy, and we are the biggest democracy in the world, and we have to lead by example. So obviously, whosoever we can enable, whichever citizen we can enable them in voting and exercising their democratic rights, we should do that. That should be endeavor of any government. Now, secondly, as far as this system is concerned, Election Commission conducted a study. There was a matter which was going on before the Supreme Court, and EC came up with a proposal after considering all the aspects as to how this system could be operationalized. And the government also positively considered this matter, bearing in mind the observations of the Honorable Supreme Court also. And we are trying to evolve a system whereby not only all the NRIs but all the migrant workers and all the Indians who are displaced from their their parent home or whichever place, they should be able to cast their vote and exercise their democratic rights. Now, obviously, this will have several practical difficulties and challenges which will be posed in front of all of us. And the government is trying to work out and trying to evolve a system whereby we can have voting for all the Indians, irrespective of whether they are at that place or not, and also ensuring that it's a free and a fair vote. So we are still working on that system, and we have called, the law minister has told that he will have a all-party meeting with all the political parties. So we will evolve a political consensus and then go ahead with this.
Mr. Tulsi, when this debate happened in the Parliament, the Rajya Sabha yesterday, it was quite interesting, some of the issues which were raised there. But the question is, as Mr. Qureshi points out, the practical difficulties which will be encountered in doing this. How would you look at it? When Supreme Court, asked the government to go ahead, to find some solution, what is it that the Supreme Court was looking at?
You see, Supreme Court is only looking at maximizing, and I agree with the BJP spokesperson that everybody's endeavor should be to maximize the vote, and everyone should be able to exercise their franchise. But the point is that the franchise of the migrant people in India, they're to the tune of about 27%. And whereas the NRIs are less than 1%. If we are not able to give or make any effort to provide facility for the migrant labor within the country to be able to exercise e-voting or any other system which is foolproof, then how is it that we can ever succeed by doing this on foreign soil? I personally feel that this is a much higher priority, and there are only about 10 million, less than 1% of NRIs. The question is, the prime importance is for the integrity of the election process. And for preserving the integrity of the election process, there are two fundamental principles which are non-negotiable. And these are the secrecy of ballot, and second is the physical presence of the voter in the polling booth. In India, at least, we can provide physical presence. We can have the polling booths where the migrant workers can cast their vote in those polling booths where they are, wherever they are working, where they are employed.
Mr. Tulsi, I'm sorry to intervene, but you know why should we tag along these two issues together? If you're talking of maximizing votes in this country and allowing, why not look at start with a more doable thing, because migrant population, migrant labor issue is a huge issue.
No, this is, if we can't do it in the country, how are we ever going to wait? If you want to distant voting, you should first experiment in your own country. And I want to know, why do we want to go abroad first? Why do we prefer the non-resident Indians to the migrant workers only because the migrant worker is poor and he cannot contribute to the kitty of the ruling party? Why are we preferring the NRIs?
Girish,
because they may have already contributed huge amounts to the... What is the reason, what is the rationale for differentiation, discrimination? Why are we preferring only the affluent and ignoring the poor?
No, that's an incorrect perception.
Okay.
Let me just add on to it. Now, as far as migrants within the country are concerned...
let me get Mr. Aman Sinha wants to react.
Just a brief response.
Aman, one second. Before you react. There is this genuine feeling among a certain people that this NRI thing is being pushed forward because, you know, it seems that it may be convenient to the ruling party. The Madison Square Garden crowd is with you. So all this is, you know, is being done to cater to the Madison Square Garden crowd.
No, that is a fact. The people of India have voted for our party in the 2014 elections. It was the biggest election in the world, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi and BJP got mandate. That is a fact which all of us have to acknowledge and accept, whether we like it or not. The point is that as far as migrants within the country are concerned, Girishji, they are free to, you know, register to their, you know, local polling booth and have their vote, registered there. And they can always cast their vote from there. So that freedom is already there with migrants within the country. And
is it there, Mr. Qureshi?
He's right. He's right. Because
so therefore,
at least you have the facility. You wherever you are normally resident, which is 6 months or more, you can register. And when you go back, you can cancel here and register there. So that facility is there.
Yes.
And many of the migrants within the country, they have sometimes a few of them also have votes at 2 places, and as Qureshi Saab is saying, so they get it cancelled. So that choice is there with the migrants within the country. But on basis of that argument, to deny other Indians right of casting their vote in a direct election will not be a advisable
Tapan,
exercise.
You see, if we are to maximize the vote, I think everybody is on the same page about the whole objective of this franchisee process. If we are to maximize the vote, we must try with the maximum number of people who are involved in it. And
who are being denied
naturally, we have to take the migrant workers first, then the NRIs. Simply by dint of numbers. They are Indians, they are working, and it is not only internal migrants. There are international migrants also, who are one of the biggest remitter to Indian exchequer in terms of foreign exchange. NRIs does not even contribute even 1% of what the international migrant workers are remitting to India.
You're talking of international migrants, Indians who are working abroad.
Yes, they are remitting to India.
The essential difference between international migrants and NRI?
There is this difference, definitely.
As long as they are Indians, they all have a right to vote in case it is physically possible, and the government is trying to enable them to vote. That is all.
Still there are difference between international migrant workers and NRIs.
No, but you can't differentiate between the international migrants and NRIs.
International migrant workers are registered in their home places mostly, whereas many of the NRIs are required to register themselves, and that number is now, I think, around 11,000. 8,000 and gradually increased to 11,000, which is even less the number of NRIs, but even compared to that number of NRIs, 11,000 is just very insignificant. So this is one aspect. Second thing is that it is not wholly correct that even the internal migrants are getting their right to vote in their respective. It is not easy for a migrant workers from Bengal coming to Haryana to register as voters. They need to give their address proof, they need to give their ration card, which normally they are not being issued. Anybody if work in the industrial areas where maximum migrant workers are there in Haryana, Punjab and other areas, they know, they will be able to know that despite effort, till now the majority section of the local migrant workers are not voter of that locality. If they want to vote, they have to spend a lot to go back to their place and cast their vote.
Or political parties taking them back to their we have heard of that also. A lot of migrant labor are taken back to their home states by political parties.
Still, it is a very negligibly insignificant proportion.
Absolutely. But Girishji, all migrants within the country, they have an option, they have a choice of voting at the place of their work. They can get registered.
The option is there, but the question is the practical problems.
Getting registered is not a
absolutely the practical problems.
Till now, it could not be made possible.
Yes, we should try to simplify it, and it is very well structured now, thanks to Election Commission.
To go there and make a physical check. But another important issue here is involved, what Mr. Qureshi told, that we must arrange all these things, taking care of certain issues which cannot be compromised. One is integrity of the voting process.
Absolutely.
And another is the secrecy of the vote.
Right.
So, within that, we have to find out a mechanism.
Mr. Shankar Mukherjee, you have been a diplomat, you worked in several countries, including in UK, where Indian NRIs, I'm sure, is a large number. You think that this demand for getting the voting right is something which is more in terms of the noise which is made, as Mr. Qureshi was pointing out, then when they were asked to register, the registration is quite, the number of people who register are quite few. So is this something which really bothers the NRI?
Indeed it does. Wherever there is a very large community of Indian origin who are Indian passport holders in the country of residence, certainly there is always a demand, an urge for them to be able to vote. Now, if I can just put things in perspective from my point of view.
Yes.
Number one, as a diplomat who has served abroad for many, many years, I can say it is absolutely true that it is not going to be possible, given the numbers, for embassies to handle this thing. People, forget the UK and the US, where we have 5 consulates in the US. In most embassies, most Indian embassies are quite small. I mean, it's a myth that we are well staffed abroad. We are among the least staffed, in terms of our strength in embassies compared to the size and the importance of India, point number one. Number two, I think the speakers who have spoken before me, they have given the background, the practical difficulties and the objectives very clearly. And if I can just summarize, the fact is that the vote is fundamental to any democracy, any genuine democracy. In between elections, we are in the hands of the government. It is only at election time that a citizen not only, is just another pawn in the hands of policymakers. He determines the government that he is going to be ruled by. This is something not just emotional, it is absolutely fundamental to democracy. So the overall objective must be, simply put, to get as many people to vote as possible. So from what I heard from our experts, the problem is logistics. The problem is not any disagreement between political parties or any disagreement about the law or any disagreement about the fundamental objective of allowing people to vote in maximum numbers. I think India has the capability, the technical knowledge, and the commitment of our legislators to do this.
Okay.
After all, for instance, in the question of migrants, the experts have pointed out that migrants can vote if they've been resident there for 6 months in the place where they are staying. There must be, therefore, a huge public awareness campaign explaining this to the people who are affected. We've done campaigns for polio, for the girl child, for all kinds of things. We should have a campaign on this basis. On one other thing, so it's a logistical problem. Just two things I will add. Just two things. One, I disagree with the statement that was made about the fact that the NRIs, well, I don't disagree with it, but I want to explain it, that the NRIs are getting excessive attention because of their financial clout.
Right.
That is true, but it should not be the case. Again, the fundamental basis of our democracy is that the billionaire's vote is exactly the same as the rickshawala's vote.
Absolutely.
So that should, the legislator should make it absolutely clear that the poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich are on an equal footing.
Okay, sir.
And finally, just the final point is, as Cardinal Newman said, if we wait to do something until we can do it ideally, we will never do it. So let's not wait until we've plugged every loophole, attained an ideal logistical situation. Let's go ahead with something that works, let's say 85–90%, and then let's see where it goes. Let's not the best become the enemy of the good.
Mr. Qureshi, when we are talking of this, there are practical problems which we are discussing. Now, as far as other countries' experience is concerned, how do other countries handle this? How do other major democracies in this world handle this problem?
Yeah.
Because they also must be facing similar problems.
Yes, sure. But allow me to deal with 2 points which just came up. One is about the logistics, the other is about the integrity of the process.
Right.
Both very important. Logistically, very often we are told that in some countries they allow the distance voting or voting in the embassies. Now, in India, it is not.
Because we have heard US citizens, for instance, go and vote in their embassies here.
Why US is different from India? Because it is just one constituency for the whole US. 3–4 candidates, and wherever in the world you have this. Don't forget that we have 543 constituencies, and we will also have Vidhan Sabha election. We can't discriminate. 4,120 constituencies, which means we'll have 4,120 machines for you to choose from. We don't know which constituency.
It doesn't happen. Luckily, it doesn't happen at the same time.
No. Even if it happens at the same time, we cannot provide logistically. It's impossible. The other issue is about integrity. Here, you know how rigidly we enforce the model code of conduct. We have on record minister who was giving 100 rupees outside the temple. He was challaned for violating the model code of conduct. How will we, do the watch over the campaign? There will be booze party. There will be chicken flying and booze flowing. How do we control that?
So that is So as far as we cannot take lessons from other democracies.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to say.
Quite right. Also, even internationally, there are very few countries who have this system. Don't forget that in India, when we use EVM, which is the simplest 17th century technology of a calculator, that is questioned. We have been held up over in various courts. It has gone up to Supreme Court. Therefore, the internet voting is definitely out.
Okay, yeah.
Girish ji, the Election Commission itself constituted an expert committee which went into all the aspects of the matter. They themselves opined that this system is pretty much workable. This could be evolved with efforts of all these stakeholders. And therefore, this was their clear opinion before the Supreme Court.
Where is the debate
such a system should be operationalized. Now, Supreme Court also factoring in all the arguments of all these stakeholders came to a conclusion that yes, this system could be operationalized subject to consent of the legislatures and the legislators and the government.
No, what system are you talking about?
The system of NRI external voting. And this system of external voting is already,
the question is now, can e-voting, proxy voting be done? These are the issues.
Yeah, no, the issue is that there are several challenges in front of all of us. Obviously, there can be chinks in the armor. It's not going to be a foolproof system. But can that be argument to deny voting rights to all the deserving Indian citizens who are
Mr.
abroad?
Tulsi?
Now, just one short point also which I wanted to make, that Supreme Court also considered all these arguments, and after considering all these arguments, the Supreme Court was also prima facie of the opinion that such a system should be there. Voting has to be maximized, and therefore it asked the central government to come up with its opinion, and therefore central government opined that we'll positively consider this and we are working towards this.
Mr. Tulsi, maximizing the votes you also talk about. Now let us start with the NRIs if we have to, then go into the larger issue of the domestic migrant labor. Why not?
No, you can't, that's reversing. Why are we only wanting to give an impression that the rich are more important than the poor?
No, this is the impression that you are giving.
It's very unfortunate.
No, I do not know. It was the Congress party.
One second, Aman, let him finish. Mr. Tulsi.
No, but I will have to add something to that.
Mr. Tulsi, sorry to intervene. But, you know, it is not just, when we are talking of NRIs, I don't think we are just talking of the rich people. We are also talking of the poor people who are in the Gulf and other countries, in the Gulf countries especially, who are domestic labor and who are, you know, drivers and carpenters and all this. They also have been denied this right to vote.
They've been denied, but as Mr. Qureshi has explained very aptly, there is no way you can enforce your code of conduct on foreign soil. So how are we? We are compromising with the integrity of the entire electoral system. There are 10 million non-resident Indians. 10 million means that there would be on the average 18,000 people to each constituency you are adding. 18,000 people,
the parliamentary constituency,
if the integrity is violated, can alter the result of the election. It can get hijacked. Are we willing to take such a huge risk with our democracy?
No, but
which is the most fundamental feature of the Constitution of India?
I want to add to that.
Mr. Tulsi.
And every time the BJP is trying to say that the Supreme Court has said, Supreme Court is not a third chamber or legislature. It has to be debated in the legislature.
Okay.
Whether it is possible, whether
if there is a change in law, it has to be debated and it will be debated.
Okay.
And we from our own side, we have said that voluntarily we are going to have all party meeting. But however, presuming all arguments of my Congress friend to be correct, what is their stand? They should clarify. Are they against voting for these NRIs?
It's not a question.
No, all the arguments that he seems to be making say that they are against, this kind of a system. So if that be the case, why don't they, say it in open? Why don't they clarify what their stand is?
Okay,
they are just making arguments both ways and self-contradicting themselves.
Yes,
I'm trying to confuse. They are themselves also confused and trying to confuse others also.
Yes. Very quickly, sir, we are running out of time.
I am saying that first experiment distant voting in India.
Okay.
And maximize it there.
That is already been done by way of postal ballots.
Then you will have enough experience of how to go about it.
Would you go along with Mr. Tulsi on this?
Very
quickly. Postal ballots, we all know what happens.
Very quickly I'm doing it. Postal ballot experiment is already there.
Postal
but that
ballots,
is not a very successful arrangement. Not a very successful arrangement.
Even in a small election of the Bar Council, in the postal ballots are hijacked by the police.
The registration, number one. Number two, so far as the registration of the domestic migrant workers, this should be the priority of the government, any government worth its name, so that they get it.
Last word,
1 minute.
No, running out of time.
And the maximization of vote definitely is always desirable.
Absolutely. Mr. Qureshi, last words.
The thing is that voting process integrity must be protected.
Mr. Qureshi, last words. Going by the discussion, the discussion, it seems to be virtually impossible to, at least in the near future, to bring in this kind of a system for the NRIs at least.
No. I don't think it is impossible, although one question of equal enforcement of model code here and there still remains. But logistically and most feasibly, what we can do is, out of the two options which Election Commission itself offered, one is e-postal ballot. I personally see it will also not work because in 13 days to expect it back from godforsaken places. But maybe proxy voting, although people can find fault with that also. I authorize you to vote for me. So it is a question of my trust. Therefore, to say that you will deceive me and vote differently.
Proxy voting will be disastrous.
Yeah, so
it will be disastrous.
I think,
everything is purchasable now.
I think on
and proxy vote means it will be disastrous.
Demons and everything is not going to help. We should move towards a solution instead of just trying to be critical of everything.
But from the debate, it's quite evident that how controversial this whole issue is. Maybe, it will take many more all-party meetings to come to some kind of a conclusion about whether this can be really achieved or not. We'll wait and watch for that. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue of Big Picture same time tomorrow.